just a quick note about writing your conclusion. Generally, it's helpful to write that conclusion last or near one of the last parts of the process. But one thing that you generally don't want to do is just to summarize what you've already stated in the body of your essay. I know that's a popular way that people try to do conclusions, and you may have been taught to do a conclusion that way in another class. However, generally, it's writing a summary as your conclusion is boring, and because if your audience was paying attention to what they were reading, and they just read what you had to say in the last couple of pages, by the time they get to the conclusion, they don't need a recap. Now, if you have written a really long piece of writing, then the summary may be helpful. But for the purposes of this class, where our papers are going to be between 3 and 5 pages, you don't need a summary conclusion because the papers just aren't that long. So you need to be thinking, what else can I do to avoid having just a summary conclusion? And one thing that you can do, and your book gives you suggestions near the end of chapter 2, is making a prediction. That's one possibility, is predicting what may happen or predicting possible outcomes. Another suggestion is ending with a quotation. Finding a really poignant quotation. Doesn't have to be anybody famous, although it could be. And leaving your audience with something really profound and attention-grabbing at the very end. You can also end with a statistic. Lots of people like facts and figures. They think of it as concrete evidence. They think of statistics as fact, almost. So sometimes leaving your audience with a good statistic that, again, that is attention-grabbing can be a good way to end your essay. You can also end with a recommendation or a call to action, especially if you're trying to be persuasive. You can try to persuade people to do something, to try to persuade people to act. But there are other various ways that you can conclude your essay. These are just some examples. But the thing to remember is, don't just end your conclusion with a summary of what you've just stated in the body of your paper.